Hi folks, my perspective here. In this video clip, we're going to look at a simple video clip taken by a pilot where the sun sets in front of the airplane. And we're going to look and reason and think about how is this possible, because if we're living on a spinning ball Earth, an airplane flying west, departing in the morning, cannot see the sunset in front of itself. So we're going to have a look at a footage of an airplane. The pilot forms the sun setting in front of him. The pilot is flying westerly and forms the sun setting in front of itself. But if we're living on a spinning ball Earth, how is this possible? So we're going to look and reason and analyze what we are seeing. So I want to encourage you, through your life, don't take anything for granted. Look, reason, and think. Things are around us. Don't just assume that they don't have a meaning. So let's have a look at an example. Now, in 1966, the rock group, The Byrds, produced a song called 8 Miles High. And they produced this poster to advertise that song. So in the poster, we see the Byrds distorted like a ball. And we'll see, for example, wording and the thoughts where it says, the sky is the limit. So what are they talking about here? What is it that's actually 8 miles high? And through this whole discussion, you're going to reason and think. And I want to encourage you to draw your own conclusions. If your conclusions are different to mine, that's fine. But draw conclusions, reason and think for yourself. So we can ask ourselves questions. So what exactly is it that's 8 miles high? What were they singing about? For example, if an airplane flies at 7.5 miles high, they say, well, the airplane can't fly higher because the air is too thin. Reason and think and draw conclusions. So let's get on with it and let's look and reason and think for ourselves. So what is it that is 8 miles high? You can draw your own conclusions. Now, we're going to look at video footage taken from an aeroplane, and it's the pilot taking the footage, and he sees the sun set in front of himself. So now there's a problem. You see, the airplane would have to be flying backward for the pilot to see the sunset in front of the airplane. So someone might laugh at you and say, well, this is not a big deal. The airplane is flying forward, but also spinning backwards with the spin of the Earth. Now we're going to debunk this, right? This is what you've been taught, but is it necessarily true? Have you put it to the test? So let's put this to the test. So we're going to have a look at footage that's taken from an airplane that leaves Seoul, South Korea. It leaves Seoul in the morning. It flies during the daytime. And that's important to remember. It flies during the daytime, and it lands in Frankfurt in Germany at nighttime. Let's look at it. Here's the footage. We see the plane takes off from Seoul in South Korea, flies during the day, it flies over China. Remember, the plane is flying during the daytime. This is important. Then the pilot sees the sun in front of the airplane. So as the pilot flies over Europe, flies over Belgrade, right, and flies over Lithuania, then as it approaches Europe, the sun is in front of the plane. And the sun is setting in Germany in front of the plane. So, here's the problem. The Earth does a half an hour rotation, it's a 12-hour flight. So if the plane is flying westerly, it has to fly to the other side of the Earth. So do you see the problem? There's huge problems with this. This footage shows that the Earth is flat and it's not spinning. So how? Let's analyze and reason and think and draw conclusions. Look, the plane is flying from Seoul. It's flying westerly. The Earth is spinning easterly. It's a 12-hour flight. If that plane flies during the day, right, and sees the sunset, where would the plane land? Would it land back in Seoul? Can't land in Frankfurt in Germany because the Earth has a half an hour rotation and it's a 12-hour flight. How can a plane be flying during the day? The plane must fly during the night. So the plane would have to fly westerly, fly during the night, and as the Earth has a half a rotation in that 12-hour period, the plane would land in Frankfurt, must land during the night. Can't land at sunset because it's landing back in Seoul. Right? So by looking, reasoning, and thinking, drawing conclusions, something is wrong. Right? If the aeroplane is spinning backwards with the spin of the Earth, it can't be true either. There's a problem. So let's analyze it. What's the problem? Well, if the aeroplane is flying backwards, getting pulled backwards with the spin of the Earth, the aeroplane has to fly from point A to point B. It has to fly from Seoul to Frankfurt in Germany. 12 hours later, it must land when? Well, where Germany is going to be. It has to land in the morning. It has to, because that's where Germany is if the Earth is spinning. So we see that the footage doesn't add up to any of the circumstances that we see, except if the Earth is flat and not moving. So let's illustrate the point. A plane takes off from Africa in the morning. It's flying to South America. It's a 12-hour flight. The sun is moving faster than the airplane. So then the airplane can fly westerly and see the sunset in front of itself. This is the only logical scenario, that the Earth is flat and the Earth is not spinning. So there are a few flights that fly westerly, and they all have the same problem. You can go and look them up and then just reason and think about it. So the issue is the airplane has to fly during the day. If the airplane sees the sunset after flying during the day, there's a problem. If it leaves in the morning, then it has to land back where it took off from if it's flying during the day. So here's the footage. Just reason and think. It leaves in the morning, flies during the day, lands at sunset, and the pilot can film the sun in front of itself. So if we look at it in three-dimensional, the plane leaves Seoul. It's a 12-hour flight. During that 12 hours, the Earth does half a rotation. That airplane takes off in the morning. It has to land in the morning because the Earth is doing a half an hour rotation. So there are no circumstances that fit this scenario on a ball Earth where a plane can leave Seoul in the morning, land Frankfurt with the sun in front of the airplane, except if the Earth is flat. Because if the pilot can see the sun in front of itself, it must be landing back in Seoul, where it took off from, because the Earth is doing a half a rotation in that same period of time. Now, let's look at the flight. We're going to reverse the flight. The flight now takes off from Frankfurt and flies to Seoul. While an airplane flying east would have to turn around to see the sunset in front of the plane. So these are simple things that tell us we are not living on a spinning ball Earth. So let's have a look at the scenario. The plane is leaving Frankfurt, it's flying east, and it's flying to Seoul. Well, if that plane travels for a 12-hour flight, the Earth does a half a rotation in that same 12-hour. That plane would land back where it took off from. So what has to happen? If the plane is flying east, it has to land in point B, Seoul. So the airplane then would have to fly faster than the spin of the Earth, fly right around the Earth, experience a 6-hour day and a 6-hour night, and then land at Frankfurt when? In the morning. And this doesn't happen? It tells us that the earth isn't moving. We're not living on a spinning ball. The earth is flat and is fixed, it's stationary. So, let's see, the plane flies from Frankfurt, it's flying east. If the plane is flying slowly, right, what would happen? Well, then Seoul would come up from the back end of the airplane. The pilot would just land in Seoul as the earth rotates underneath itself. So we'll say, no, this doesn't happen, right? So it's simple, logic. The airplane just has to fly westerly if it's leaving Frankfurt and then land in Seoul on a westerly direction, refuel and then simply carry on, and we'll be able to do both trips in 12 hours because it's logical. If you go to one end of the earth, then you turn around and come back in the opposite direction, well, the earth isn't moving. The earth must be flat. That's why you have to turn around and come back in the opposite direction. Do you see the problem? Right, so let's look at it like this. The plane leaves Frankfurt. It would fly westerly. Right, so that red dot represents where it took off from. It would fly over America and then land in Seoul a few hours later. So what distance would the plane have traveled? Would it travel that short distance? Then the plane then would continue its flight to. So remember, I'm using an azimuthal equidistant map. So the azimuthal equidistant map for the flat Earth in the northern hemisphere is exactly the same for a ball Earth. There's no difference. So we can do this experiment for both a flat Earth and a ball Earth. We can see then that we are not living on a rotating Earth. The Earth is fixed. It cannot move. It isn't moving. So let's look at this whole situation in 3D space. If the plane leaves Frankfurt in the morning and is flying to Seoul, and we compare it to a plane leaving at sunset, 6 o'clock at night, and is flying to Frankfurt, what would happen? Both airplanes, we know their flight speed and distance and time is the same for both planes. But how can that be if the Earth is spinning? What would happen? So if we compare the two, the plane leaves Frankfurt in the morning. Right? The Earth is doing a half a rotation. It's a 12-hour flight. That plane would have to fly around the Earth to catch up to Seoul. The plane leaving Seoul, that's flying to Germany, if it's a 12-hour flight, that means the plane couldn't have actually gone anywhere. It has to just hang around in air, in space, as the Earth spins, because it's a 12-hour flight. And the Earth does a half a rotation in that 12 hour. That means the plane has to just simply stand still and then land in Frankfurt. So the plane from Frankfurt would land in Seoul when? At sunset. Right? This doesn't match up with reality. It helps us to understand that we are not living on a spinning ball Earth. What we see with our eyes, and when we reason and think on what's going on, we see that it doesn't match the spinning ball Earth. It matches a fixed, non-rotating plane. The Earth is flat and it isn't moving. So a plane leaving point A has to fly to point B with the spin of the Earth. Would have to fly right around the Earth. If it's a 12-hour flight, it has to land when? In the morning, because the Earth is doing a half a rotation. So what would happen? Airlines would simply fly westerly, depending on the distance that they have to travel, because it would be a shorter distance. They would save time and save money. But this doesn't happen. Planes fly in one direction, they turn around and come back in the opposite direction, travel the same distance and speed, and land in the same amount of time. It tells you that the Earth is flat and it is not spinning. That's the only logical conclusion that we can draw. What we see doesn't match that we're living on a spinning ball Earth. Now, this man goes to court. Now, if the judge says to him, we have evidence which proves you have been dishonest in the court, then that man says, Or why would I lie? Right? He's insulting the intelligence of the court. Just answer him. Give him an answer. Why would he lie? Because he's a criminal and because he's a liar. Don't waste our time with this nonsense. Why would they lie? Now, some people would say, well, why would they lie? It's because they want you to disregard all the evidence that's presented. They're trying to flip you. Now, some people would say, why would they lie? Because they don't want to deal with the evidence. The evidence is there that we've been lied to on a grand scale. You can't debunk the evidence. So they don't want to deal with the evidence, so they just say, why would they lie? And of course, you have the others that want to bring up, why would they lie, to flip you. So that you would just say, oh, well, this is just too hard to think about. Why would they lie? No, there's no way they're going to lie when the evidence is there that they have been lying. So it takes courage to deal with the proof. It takes courage to deal with the evidence. Now, this calls into question the education system itself. So the meaning of education, what is that? It's the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction. So when they sell you their lies, you pay for your education, then they mock you. They give you a hat, right? Mortarboard hat. What goes onto a mortarboard hat? Cement. And what does cement go onto? A brick. So when they turn you into a dumbass brick, right, they mock you. You pay for your education. They have to say, well, that's the process of receiving or giving systematic instructions. It doesn't mean that the systematic instruction was true. That's what most people don't get. It's just instruction. It doesn't mean that the instructions was accurate and that was based on truth. It's education. It's instructions, systematic instruction. So let's think about it. What's the difference between a politician and a gangster? A politician has its police force that enforces its policies. So do gangsters. So what's the difference between a politician and a gangster? Well, a politician, he just made his crime legal. When a country invades another country, they just go to court and they legalize the invasion. Then they'll go and murder and steal another country's oil and take away their civil rights. What's the difference? The politician just made his crime legal. It's not about justice. It's not about what is true. It's not about what is right. Making something legal doesn't make it honest, doesn't make it true. That's how the system is. Human trafficking is about ownership. All human beings alive today are victims of human trafficking. That's human trafficking. When they brand you, when they branded the slaves, you just get a passport, right? It's controlling the trafficking. It's about control. It's about ownership. Because you need their permission to move around. Somehow, these people think that they own you. Well, no, they don't. They don't own you. They cannot brand you and you're not their slave unless you give in to them and you accept their nonsense. You accept the fact that these people control you. Who gave them the right to do this? No one. They just took it upon themselves. Human trafficking. We're all victims of it. This is a quote from Victor Hugo. He said, "He who opens a school door closes a prison." Is that right? No. Because prison has got nothing to do about education. Some of the world's worst criminals were well educated. It implies someone who's not educated is automatically going to be a convict. That's not true. Many people who are well educated get away with these crimes because they work the system and don't get caught. Systematic instruction is not about the truth. It's not about justice, honesty, or loyalty. Do you honestly think that wearing a uniform makes a person loyal? No. or just? No. Because truth, justice, and honesty is based on love. Loyalty is based on love, not systematic instruction. Systematic instruction produces puppets. As soon as you start to reason and think and question, you'll start to see that there's huge problems. Even though some people are going to mock you, they're going to laugh at you, call you an idiot. It's fine. Who's the fool? It's them. Look, will you be excused for ignoring your conscience, for ignoring your senses? If I took the word conscience and senses and I put them in a bag, what is that called? It's called common sense. Now, a man who's in the military, who gets instructions to kill a civilian and he does it, he will not be excused in a court of law. He will be held liable. He will be called a murderer, and rightly so. Why? He can't say, I was just following systematic instruction. He is not excused. He will suffer the penalty. Now, if you go to school and you just say, oh, well, I was just following the systematic instructions, and you refuse to reason and think about it, it's not their fault. It's your fault. They bamboozled you, and it's your own fault. Do you understand? If you don't question the systematic instruction, it's your own fault. You've got no one else to blame except yourself. And they will just laugh at you and mock you because you believed it without questioning it. They're going to just say, well, you're an idiot. Why did you believe us? When common sense should tell you that what we told you, the systematic instruction we gave you, was wrong. So the education system marks you. It reveals what is in you, your character, what is in your mind and heart. Remember, writing the answer doesn't make the answer right. This is not about learning to read and write. It's not about poetry, art. Systematic instruction is about control. You need to question it and put it to the test. That is your responsibility, not theirs. And if you don't apply the information and put it to the test, that is your fault. It comes on your own head. You can't blame anybody else. You have to blame yourself for being dumbass, lazy. You don't want to think about it, and you don't want to man up and face the truth. Then it's your fault. No one else's fault. Right, so when we put that to the test, an airplane would have to be flying backward for the pilot to see the sunset in front of the airplane. Then the educated response is the airplane is flying forward, but it's also moving backward with the spin of the earth. Well, we've seen it doesn't add up. It's not possible, and we're going to debunk this with another flight. But before we get there, let's just stop and reason and think. Now, Tom Bowdett, I agree with his quote. He said, the difference between school and life. In school, you're taught a lesson, then given a test. Now in life, you're given a test that teaches you a lesson. Absolutely. You see, if that pilot was flying that plane, he'd have to reason and think. If the sun is 150 million kilometers, right, in front of him, he would have to be flying, not in the daytime, but at nighttime. If the horizon is at 7.5 miles, for example, and the clouds are at 7 miles, then the sun must be 8 miles above the earth, and the earth must be flat. The earth cannot be spinning and rotating. Because if he was on a ball, he'd be flying on the night side, not the day side. Right? You can't be flying during the day, and you can't be flying towards the sun. Why? Because you were flying towards the sun during the day, the dumbass ballers would have to be behind you, not in front of you. The horizon, right? If the horizon is in front of you, how can it be? You'd be flying on the night side. If the horizon is in front of you, then the answer is simple. The only way you can be flying towards the sun in and during the day is if the earth is flat. And you don't need a degree in science to work this nonsense out. It's simple logic. Stop, reason, and think. So, you'll get two types of people. One will say, well, the education system is the lesson, go back to school. The lessons from men. Right? That's where you're going to be taught. Where the other line of thought is, whereas your life is the lesson. The more you pay attention in life, the more you will learn. That's going to increase your knowledge. And that lesson comes from where? From the Creator. The education system just produces parrots. So what do we know about parrots? They've got all the bells and whistles. But when they open their mouths, there's just nonsense squawking. Whereas a humble nightingale, when it opens its mouth, you can tolerate what comes out of a nightingale's mouth. Parrots become obnoxious after a while. They might look the part, all pretty and all the rest, but they are very irritating. You can't put up with them for a long period of time. So in the system, oh yes, we've got our parrots, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He's got degrees in science fiction. What we see, that video footage tells us that Neil deGrasse Tyson is talking absolute nonsense. The lesson is, there's nothing wrong with being a humble sparrow. Nothing wrong at all. Watch out for the parrots. They just squawk and they look the part, but what comes out of their mouth is just squawking. Here's another well-known parrot, Richard Dawkins. Right? He's a professor for the public understanding of science, evolutionary biology. Yet Richard Dawkins cannot explain or produce one example of how Pteridophyta morphed into Spermatophyta. How did the spore-bearing plants now all of a sudden produce seeds? Because they come in two sections. For example, cone-bearing cycads, for example. How did the ferns, the Pteridophyta, now all of a sudden start producing cones and seeds? Why are there no cycads or Spermatophyta that also give you spore? You don't get flowers from a fern. Ferns are ferns. Spore-bearing plants are spore-bearing. So if you look at, for example, at a Dicksonia, a spore-bearing plant, you can mix species together. I can go to Dicksonia sclerosa and mix it with Dicksonia fibrosa. But that plant will be sterile. Now I can take a Dicksonia and a Lophosauria. Both are Pteridophyta. I can't mix them because their genera is not the same. So I can't go from genera to genera. I can go from species within a group, but yet that plant will be sterile. Richard Dawkins cannot explain that. If these plants evolved, there would be millions of plants that prove what they're saying is true, yet there isn't one. They can't even go into a laboratory and make one. They cannot produce a spore-bearing plant that also produces seeds. They cannot produce a spore-bearing plant that produces flowers. Not one. So if thinking human beings that are intelligent cannot manipulate it, how on earth could these things do it on their own? So when you put them to the test, they fall short. You need to question and test what they're saying. Test their credentials. Put them to the test. You will find that they are just loudmouth parrots. You see, what we'll have two opposing sides leading you down the same garden path. You'll think that these two people here are opposing each other. No, they're not. They're on the same side. They're leading you down the same garden path. Both of them will tell you living on a spinning ball earth which defies all logic, it defies all reasoning. You see, they'll tell you that nothing can travel faster than 300,000 kilometers per second. Speed of light. Well, how's that possible? Because if the universe, right, just exploded, its speed would get exponentially faster. So within a few minutes, the speed of the expanding universe would be faster than the speed of light. It's just common sense. How can they then say that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light? Because the speed of the expanding universe would be faster within a few minutes of it being created. It doesn't add up. So what I want to encourage you to do is look, reason and think. Draw your own conclusions. And even if those conclusions disagree, you and I can disagree. But as long as we're thinking and reasoning and putting these things to the test, we will see that a lot of what they say doesn't add up. So a person will say, well, I don't believe in religion, I believe in science. They'll laugh at you if you say, look, I believe in a creator. I believe in a creator. They'll laugh at you. But what if a religion masquerades as science? What then? You see, we see that there are many wolves in religion. There's no doubt about it. Do you think that science escaped? That these same wolves aren't in science? If they're in religion, my buddy, they're in science. Because these wolves are about controlling the sheep. They don't care which side you take. They want to control you. They'll control you through religion. And if they can't dumb you down and trap you in religion, they'll trap you in science. It's about controlling you. Think about it carefully. Put their reasonings to the test. That's all I'm saying to you. So, if a religion now repackages their religion of sun worship and they slip it into the education system as a part of science, it's one of the disciplines of science. Where does the word discipline come from? It comes from the word disciple. Then you belong to religion without even knowing it. Then you are more religious than you've ever realized. So, bear with me. We're going to put this to the test, then we're going to have a look at our final example. So let's put this to the test. So, religion, science. Right. Let's look at NASA. NASA, they'll say that's science. They've got a rocket. Right. They'll have an event and they'll call it, well, it's Osiris Rex. So who's Osiris? Well, he's the god of afterlife, the dead and the resurrection and the life. Rex means king. So Osiris the king of what? Of the resurrection of everlasting life. Well, that's interesting. And they use a rocket. Right? Now let's look at religion. Jesus Christ. He's referred to as the rock. The word NASA is in the Bible. And who does that apply to? It applies to Jesus Christ. So, in what sense? In its application. So the word NASA, it applies to Jesus, to carry, to bear, to lift up, to take up. He's a leader, an elevated one, a prince, right? To take up, to lift up. Also, to be taken as in marriage. If you read Jesus' words about the bride and the groom, you'll understand exactly what it's all about. So in its application, blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sins have been taken up. NASA. It's Psalms 32. So do we see? Is this just a coincidence? The Savior is the Son or the Son? Depends which Son. You think it's just about spelling? Rocket? No. This is about religion. Do you think on the right-hand side we have science and on the left we have religion? Or both of these religious systems? They're both religious systems. You belong to a religion when you follow these people, whether you like it or not. Let's look at it deeper. Now, Jesus Christ. Through his sacrifice, men can be taken into heaven and defeat the grave. So Apollo, Saturn, right? Through Apollo's sacrifice, men can be taken into heaven and defeat gravity. Do you think it's just a coincidence? Look, in a rocket, they'll tell you that all of that smoke and fire is to get the men in the top into heaven. Remember Felix Baumgartner? They just stuck him in a balloon. Why didn't NASA just ignore all the fire and smoke and just stick people in a balloon? They need a little bit of rocket fuel when they get into space. Why waste all that fire and smoke and rocket fuel just to get yourself up into the space, into the stratosphere? It doesn't make sense. Something else is going on here. So, let's test this even further. If you had to go to a Greek-speaking priest and you ask him, listen, what are the Greek words that were used for the cross in the scriptures, in the Koine Greek scriptures when they were written? He'll tell you there are two words. The first word is pronounced stavros. Comes from the root word for stav, a staff. Stavros can mean a cross or a pole, an upright pole. Now, a rocket, what would be the key Greek word for rocket? The stavros. Right? So just a coincidence? So maybe. What is the other word? The other word is pronounced exilon. So we still use these words today. For example, this is the poem Metroxylon Americorum. So metro, mother, exilon means a pole, a cross, or a piece of wood, can mean a tree. But now we're missing something. Stavros and exilon also can mean what? What aren't we seeing? They can also be applied to idolatry. Stavros and exilon also apply to idols. Now, in the scriptures, the nation of Israel were being bitten by serpents, liars and deceivers, and they were suffering and dying from these deceivers that were biting them. So the Creator said to Moses, take a pole, wrap a copper serpent around this pole. And anyone who comes to you and who sees this pole, they won't die from it. So faith was required. Right, now follow me here. What happened with the nation of Israel? What did they do? They took that pole and they started worshipping it. And that was a precursor of things to come. So idolatry is mental blindness. Right? Idolatry is a way of trapping human beings. So both science and religion use idolatry to dumb you down so that you don't think and reason. Once you see and understand what is going on, you don't need those idols. The idols dumb you down. The meaning isn't in the idols. The meaning is in the reasoning and thinking. What is going on? What is this all about? We need to think and reason and draw conclusions. So you might not draw the same conclusions as me. That's fine. But at least you're reasoning and thinking, because those who don't are going to be dumbed down by idolatry. So, in Deuteronomy 5 verse 8, the Creator said, don't make for yourself an image in the form of anything in the heavens above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. Why? Because those things are going to be used to dumb you down. There's meaning in everything in life. And if you don't understand the meaning, you're going to be bombed down and dumbed down by the idols they create deliberately from both religion and from science. They're coming from the same side. So in Revelation, it talks about a land beast that creates an image. It's an image of the original beast, which is Satan. Now this image, we know, is the political system because it's born out in Daniel. If you look at the scriptures in Revelation in Daniel, the angel in Daniel explains that the political system is called a beast, but the original beast is actually Satan himself. Now, this beast that comes from the land, it creates an image. What is this image? It's an idol. This beast makes this idol come to life. It moves, and it puts everybody in awe of this image. And so they believe this image and they bow down to this image. They believe it and they follow it. And in that sense, they give their worship to Satan, who created that image. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. It's a form of idolatry, and it's done deliberately because dumbass, stupid people who fall into the trap of idolatry become mindless idiots. They don't think and reason beyond what they can see. There's a meaning in everything. So there's a physical reality and a spiritual reality. These cannot be separated from one from the other. That's why at 1 Corinthians 10:14, Paul said, so my dear friends, flee, run away from the worship of idols. Why? Because it's a trap. It's a mental trap. People who get caught up in idolatry become dumbed down and they cannot see beyond their nose. So why? You worship the one who made the statue or the idol or the image. Idolatry is about worship. You don't need this garbage in your life. Just open your eyes and look around. So, remember, a priest can come to you. He's basing his authority. Remember, his status, a priest's status is coming from where? From the Bible. The Bible says that the earth cannot be moved and is flat. And yet you'll have a priest who saying the earth is a moving spinning ball. Well, then you recognize the full wolf for what it is. Living a lie is a waste of time and a waste of money. It's a waste of your energy. Pay attention to the world around you. Pay attention to what is going on around you. That's the lesson. Pay attention to your life. You're not going to learn these things in a classroom. You're going to learn them in life. The more you pay attention in life, the more you're going to learn. So stop and reason and think. Education. The process of receiving or giving systematic instructions, whether it's religious instruction or instructions in science, if you do not put it to the test, then that's all it is. It doesn't make it true. So let's have a look at our last example. How is it possible that a pilot can film the setting sun from his aeroplane? Or a passenger in this case? We're going to look at footage taken from, it's a non-stop flight from the island of Mauritius to Frankfurt in Germany. 12-hour flight. Remember, the Earth does a half a rotation. So a bit about the island of Mauritius. I was there at the beginning of 2020. When I returned back to South Africa. This is a painting I did. We went to Le Morne, spent a bit of time there. It is a beautiful place. I've been there a few times, and we filmed some stuff. This is at a place called Logolay, Casse Noyala. This is over Le Morne Bay, filming the sunrise. It is absolutely beautiful place. The people are amazing, just amazing place, amazing, beautiful people. The movie Serenity was filmed there at River Noir, Black River, at a place called Tamaray. And it just so happens that we took some footage quite a while back at Tamarin Bay, Tamaray. We have the mountain, Montagne du Rempart, and the sun. So we set up our camera here, and this was the opening shot also for that movie. And then I fly my drone, got some amazing footage. It's a beautiful place. It's a photographer's dream. You can't take bad photographs on the island of Mauritius. I'd recommend it. So I'm flying over here. This is at looking over La Prairie, and this is back at Montagne du Rempart. And so I'm doing time lapse. I set my drone up. So if you're interested in the island, I'm going to put a couple of links to some footage and some places to go and see and have a look. And I'd recommend it. If you get a chance to go there, wow, I've been there a few times. It is absolutely stunning. Love the place. Right, so we're going to look at video footage. The plane leaves Mauritius and it flies to Frankfurt. Right, so now let's look at the issues. Right, a pilot flying either north or south can only see the sun in front of the airplane if he flies over the poles. That is true. We're going to look at footage. We're going to question the footage. In the footage, we see that the airplane leaves. So when we look at footage, the airplane leaves the island of Mauritius. It's flying south, easterly. The passenger sees the sun on his left-hand side. The plane then turns around and flies northwest. And when the airplane is flying over the Sudan, it's flying over Libya, flies over the Mediterranean, over Italy, we see the sun moves from the left-hand side of the plane to the front of the plane. But now, if this plane is flying over a ball earth, how is this possible? It's not possible. Let's look at the footage, and let's look at the footage. So the plane takes off from Plaisance, it's Cebu Segor Rangoulême Airport. Right, the passenger sees the sun on his left-hand side. The plane turns around. So let's look at that again. The plane turns around. It's leaving Plaisance. It turns around now, flies back over the island, over Grand Bay in the north, and now heads over towards Madagascar. So the plane is flying north, northwesterly, flies over Madagascar. It's flying over the Madajija Mountains and the northern part of Madagascar, also a stunning place. And then the plane now flies over the ocean, crosses over South Africa, Tanzania, the bottom bit, and then also over Kenya. So Tanzania at the bottom, Mount Kilimanjaro in the far background. The plane is now flying north. Now we see the sun come into view in the passenger side. Right, the plane's flying over Uganda, flies over the Sudan and over the top part of Sudan over the Sahara Desert, and then flies over Libya. Now we see the sun. The sun is on the left-hand side of the airplane, but on the horizon. So we see the horizon and the sun on the horizon. All this while, as the plane flies over Libya, flies over the Mediterranean Sea, flies over Italy, and in Germany, the sun lands in front of the airplane in Germany, and at sunset. Something's wrong. If we're living on a spinning ball, how is this possible? It's not. So we see the sun and its reflection on the ocean. So use your eyes and use your mind. Draw conclusions. Look and think. If we're flying over a ball, how can you see the sun and its reflection on the ocean? So he's flying over Italy. The flight continues over the Mediterranean. The sun moves now to the front of the airplane and is setting in the front. So as the airplane turns now to land in Frankfurt, the sun now moves slightly to the left. So this tells us the plane is flying over a flat non-rotating Earth. The plane leaves Mauritius, gets into Africa. We're looking at Kenya. It flies over Kenya. It flies over Uganda. The person sees the sun out of his left-hand side. As he's flying over the Sahara Desert, the sun moves to the front of the airplane. Remember, at 6 o'clock the sun must set. He can't see it if he's on a ball. But yet the plane lands in Germany and the sun is in front of the airplane. Tells you Earth is flat. Right? The plane is flying northerly, it's flying northwest. And he sees the sun in front of the airplane. Common sense tells you that this airplane isn't flying over a spinning ball. So let's apply the information to the ball. If the plane leaves Mauritius, turns around, right? So now the Earth is spinning and the plane is being sucked sideways with the Earth. And it's this that completely debunks the spinning ball Earth. But it's another aspect of this. And we're going to have a look at this aspect. Right now, let's just focus on the passenger. When can he see the sun? Well, when the sun sets, the sun sets. You can't see the sun in front of the airplane if the airplane's flying north. How does the pilot see the sun in front of the airplane? So from the perspective of the passenger, right? If that airplane is flying, it turns around, it's flying over Madagascar, over Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Libya, Sahara first, then Libya, flies over the Mediterranean. The sun must set locally on the passenger's time. The sun must set when? At 6 o'clock. You can't see the sun in front of the airplane if he's on a ball. It's logical. So remember, how can you see the sun and it's the sun's reflection on the ocean? Do you understand what's the problem? It's the same issue. The sun has to be 150 million kilometers away in front of you. You cannot see the reflection of the sun on the ocean if it's on a ball. Right? And then, of course, it's just logical. If the airplane is flying over a ball Earth, he's flying during the day. How can he see the sun level with the plane's wing? because the horizon must be on the opposite side of the plane. If he's flying during the day, how can he see the horizon in front of him during the day? He'd have to be flying at night time. Now, let's have a look at this. The path of the Earth. Let's have a look. They'll say, well, let's have a look at the actual flight path. They'll say, the curved flight path shows that the airplane is flying over curved Earth. This is absolute garbage. It's mindless nonsense. Why? Because the ball is turning. If the Earth's a ball, it has to turn. So the plane leaves in Mauritius. The plane would have to pick up speed as it flies over the equator automatically, then reduce speed again so that it matches the speed of the spinning ball Earth. That's impossible. How can the airplane just automatically do this? The speed has to come from somewhere. How does that plane just automatically lose its momentum, its easterly momentum? The plane would then be flying sideways. So, what is the path? The path isn't a red line. Why? Because the ball Earth has to turn. It's a 12-hour flight. During that 12-hour flight, what is the actual path of the plane? In the opposite angle to the flight path. Because the Earth is spinning easterly. The flight path cannot be that path because the Earth is a turning ball. This would be the path of the plane. So let's simplify that. If the ball is turning, the airplane starts in this position, right? That's its starting position. But its actual path is the opposite angle to the flight path, the red line. Right, if we stop this here, Mauritius' position changed and Frankfurt Airport also changed. Their position changed. So the plane's flight path would be between those changing airports. So when they say the curved flight path that you see on the airplane, it's the curve of Earth. No, it ain't. It's garbage. It's rubbish. You need to put these things to the test and question it. And if you don't, and you end up being a dumb donkey, it's your own fault. They won't accept responsibility for it because you've got a conscience and you've got God-given eyes, you've got God-given senses, you've got a brain and a mind. So stop and reason and think. Look at things and don't just assume that there's no meaning in it. There's always a meaning in stuff. Right, so how do you separate the wheat from the weeds? How do you separate the lies from the truth? Looking carefully. Pay attention in your life. And ask the Creator to help you discern what is lies and what is the truth. The Creator won't let you down. So we see that the rulers in the system, they're getting entangled and getting caught up by their own lies. And it's just a matter of time when they get taken out. The end is coming soon. So cheers and think about what's going on. Cheers and thanks for watching.